Life. It takes many forms. Plants, animals, humans, furries, eldritch fish beyond our understanding. One of these is more terrifying than all the others, but regardless of whether your existence is an insult to God's creations, you are still a living being. But enough about furries, let's talk about some fish, of the eldritch and human variety. Path of Life is the latest and greatest venture into the dark waters that are south of Terra's continent, and it's packed to the brim with fish lore. At the highest level, the story is one that questions the meaning of one's life. Should an inquisitor be bold and decisive, aiding one's allies regardless of whether they are out of their depth, or should they take a more passive role and feel out their surroundings till they gain enough knowledge to provide meaningful help at a critical moment? Should those of Aegir be fiercely dedicated to the preservation of their people in the face of an almost certain end? Or should they attempt to build a waterway between them and those who would consume them? Is an abyssal hunter's purpose to crush the foes that crash against Aegir's walls? Or is it to ensure that a version of Aegir exists long into the future? This event even gets us to examine the unending advance of the Seaborn. Does their march bring salvation or ruination to Terra? Only time will answer these questions, and Path of Life intends to explore the many different paths walked by those who call Terra their home, while not necessarily giving a definitive answer. Path of Life finally gives us a solid placement for the Abyssal Hunter storyline, roughly a year following the events of Lone Trail, so this event is set well after the current main story, and, based on some implications, might be a bit of a prelude for Act 3. Only time will tell on that front, but if it is, you better like Aegir and the Abyssal Hunter storyline. And before you ask, no, this is still not the latest point in the timeline. Ignoring Enfield, which is set in 1600 or so, the latest point is the Sui sibling storyline taking place in 1102, while this takes place in 1100. Despite this event not being an intermezzi, it is actually stuffed with a ton of lore reveals. From expanding our understanding of Aegir from this near-mythical existence to a fully fleshed out civilization, to providing an origin for the Seaborn. Now, exploring at least one of these topics might take away some of the charm points from that faction, but I will hold my complaints till after I've discussed the story. Aegir can now be described as more than just Arknights Atlantis. I mean, it's still a more advanced civilization hidden beneath the waves, but now we can actually talk about it. Although we only see one of Aegir's cities, we get a good look into the society and the people that call it their home. From how their society is structured, to how its people live. Now, that might not sound like much on the face of it, and it isn't, but the Path of Life roll credits that these people live is one of the main focuses of this event. Aegir is a society that worships the predecessors, the official name of the Doctor's race, as a glorious civilization, and views themselves as the successors of their will. Low-key, kind of a Halo reference, but as such they view the land dwellers as an inferior people, ignorant of the greater world around them. Aegir has no fear of Originium, as none exists within the ocean, and as such all of Aegir's technology, which was developed by studying the predecessors, exists independent of Originium. Their technology reflects this deeper understanding of the universe. They are effectively an alien race when compared to the land dwellers. They power their cities using hydrogen energy. They take the heat and power from underwater volcanoes. Little handies, that useful mechanic from Saltithera Navis, are tools that simplify life. Cooking, cleaning, changing clothes, and communicating across a city. Technology, even in its lesser form within Iberia, is something that is treasured by its people, called the Hands of the Saints, while it's taken completely for granted by the Aegirians. Even their cities are built better. Not only can they exist on the ocean floor, they are also completely mobile. You want to park your city over a different volcano? Just file a form and it might be approved. Transparent domes keep the water out from above, while simultaneously making the temperature inside reflect the surfaces. The gravity of the place can allow you to swim within the city. They are even better than the land-based mobile cities, as they can freely detach any section of the city as needed without a timely delay for separating the plates. Even the great act of splitting the star pod was not beyond the Aegir. They would have pulled off that feat 300 years ago if not for the Seaborn. This section is getting a little long, so let's speedrun Aegir's society real quick. At the top is the Senate. The Senate is ruled by the consuls, who run whole cities and oversee large-scale projects that require the entire force of a city. The Senate is made up of two houses, the Academy of Science, which manages science, and the Academy of Technology, which manages technology and how it affects people. These academies themselves break down into smaller institutes, but I'll save that for a specific Aegir dedicated video. Aside from that, we got the military, which is broken into the legions, and the sea patrol. The legions are the army proper, and the Sea Patrol is essentially the police force, investigators, and disaster management all in one. They got a ton of fancy weapons as well, which are broken down from class 1 to 4, ranging from fancy guns to throwing black holes at people. Yes, that is quite a large difference. Aegir also has quite a capable welfare system, which makes sense when you have effectively finished the tech tree. Robots and AI run most of the mundane things, so Aegirians are free to do what they are passionate about. The state even raises the children, raising them in a communal manner, although you may still raise them yourself if you wish. Also, thanks to the excellent healthcare system, most Aegirians live till around 150 years old. Quite impressive. They also euthanize old people, but we can just gloss over that. So the Seaborn. They would never euthanize people. That's far less efficient than consuming them in the rat race known as constant evolution. The never-ending march of the Nether brand continues unabated since we've last seen them. In the short 3 months since Sultai Ferronavis sank, the Seaborn have already consumed it. The ancient symbol of mankind's enlightenment is nothing more than another piece of the Seaborn ecosystem. And of course, the ever-evolving creatures have continued to evolve more and more. Since they have encountered the Aegir, they have evolved to be far more immune to their technology. The Seaborn have effectively outclassed the Aegir in the evolution versus innovation arms race. They are collectively immune to most of Aegir's weapons, stated to be outright immune to class 1 and 2, and individually resistant to class 3. So guns and missiles are effectively useless, and some Seaborn simply ignore the mini black holes. Strong woman with a sword still works though, so I wonder if this is Arknights having its cake and eating it too. As you may or may not know though, the Seaborn began as a project started by the predecessors. The original purpose of the project was to create an environment for life to exist. This was towards the twilight years of the predecessor's reign, so the project never reached its full scope. The project experimented on Arknights that lived within the sea and used their bodies as nests to create this new life. It's still not clear whether the predecessors created the Arknights or simply found them on Terra, but either way, they possessed the technology to bend these gods to their will. These Arknights would become the Leviathans, or Firstborn, we know and love today. From Integrated Strategies 3, we know that at least 4 Firstborn exist. Karela Arbor, or Izumik, Mizuki when he ascends, Primordial Lifespring, the cause of the profound silence, Never-Melting Glacier, who we know practically nothing about, and Ishamala, who we are beginning to become very familiar with. Ishamala is the origin point for the modern Seaborn. It was one of their offspring that caused the very first Seaborn to come into existence, although you can blame Aegir for getting the whole process started. Around 200 years ago, Malthus, one of Aegir's great explorers, discovered the facility that housed the Great Leviathan. Ishamala shared with them the destruction of the predecessors, which caused Malthus to go a little bit crazy, realizing that destruction lies in the future for his people. As such, he consumed one of Ishamala's offspring and transformed into a Seaborn himself. Upon unleashing the trapped god, the Seaborn crisis will begin, and in the centuries since then, the Seaborn have marched down the path of survival. Also, the Doctor was totally involved in this project. I'm pretty sure this will become the meta explanation as to why Ishamala is so attached to the Doctor, so that is one thing I am happy they're adding some more justification to. As I hinted at earlier this video, this faction is the one I have the biggest problems with from this event, but we'll touch on that after the story. And if you want to tell a story, especially in this world, you're going to need some characters, so let's talk about them real quick. Most of the ones we care about are already very familiar to us. The Abyssal Hunters, Inquisitors, and Rhodes Island. The new characters this event are a bit of a mixed bag, but I am fond of some of them. So, starting off with the Abyssal Hunters, chilling for the last video, so go watch that if you want an overview of their story. Ulpanius, Gladia, Laurenttina, and Skadi. Ulpanius is our banner 6-star, and I must say I was somewhat disappointed with his role in this event. Not that he did anything wrong, I just wish he played a more active role. He spends most of the event walking from the shadows, so the other hunters get more focus earlier on. He does have a great scene with Blandis, an Aegir scientist, but aside from that, he is rather passive for the event. Not that he isn't an interesting character. His desire to help Aegir survive, and the methods he uses to achieve this goal, is reflected in this passive attitude. He only acts when necessary, and every action he takes is a calculated risk. I just wish we had more of it, cause it is a very different look at the hunters compared to what we are used to. Gladia is the hunter who takes center stage for this event, which is lovely to see. She is the figure Aegir interrogates to learn of the hunters' goals and about their time on land. Her desire to protect Aegir is the same as Ulpanius's, but they choose very different means. Ulpanius walks from the shadows, while Gladia walks front and center. The CG of her during her tribunal is a pretty good embodiment of this. Her meeting with her mother is also a pretty interesting scene and sets up a larger role for her going into the future, so a potential Gladia altar is on the cards. Laurentina gives us more of the same Spectre greatness. She doesn't have an enormous role in this event, but what we see of her further reinforces her playful attitude from Saltifera Navis. Her relationship with best girl Irene is great, and I hope we get to see more of her teasing in the future. Scotty gets more focused Ishamalah build up this event. As mentioned in the section on the Seaborn, Ishamalah and the Doctor have a connection, which may have subconsciously rubbed off on Scotty. This event has seemingly opened the door for an alternative Scotty Ishamalah ending, one not seen in IS-3. A combination of the two who chooses the path of cooperation and unity between humanity and Seaborn. Very interesting, although it might mean Scotty Alter 2 Electric Boogaloo. Calcid and the Doctor step into the depths of Terra's oceans during this event as well. Calcid as the Iberia's envoy with Aegir, and the Doctor as a representative of Rhodes Island. Calcid attempts to hide the Doctor's connection to the predecessors, but it unfortunately comes out in the end. Very interesting to have one of the very race that left their technology behind for Aegir walking among them. The Doctor for their part spends most of their time protecting and aiding the Abyssal Hunters. Specifically Scotty, who Gladia doesn't want to take into the ocean depths. The Inquisition once again returns as the premier human characters. Irene is fantastic as always. She is far more confident in herself than previously seen, and is coming to terms with her newfound role as the bridge between Iberia and Aegir. She's really stepped into her big girl shoes following the death of her master Dario, but she still has much to learn. Regardless, she serves a supporting role in this event, aiding Underflow and Lumen on their quests during Path of Life. Lumen spends most of the event exploring the world of Aegir. This is very cool. He is still searching for true meaning in his life, and is searching to uncover the remnants left behind by his ancestor. So for much of this event, his inquisitive nature serves purely as a way to justify that incredible info dump this event gives us on Aegir. Not that Lumen isn't an interesting read, just I see what you're doing, Hippogriff. So, the Aegir cast. Let's start with my favourite, Underflow. Secunda is our welfare unit, and one who I immediately E2'd. Not for gameplay or story reasons, I just thought she was hot. After reading the story though, my decision was reinforced. She, despite being an Aegir, doesn't look down on her land-dwelling ally, and fully embraced Irene's aid during their investigation. Additionally, as one of Volpanis' students, her deductive reasoning was interesting to watch throughout the event. Hopefully, she gets the Lumen and Gladia treatment, and is a returning welfare character in future events. Next up is Blandis, the aforementioned Aegir scientist. He alongside Ulpanias were the two who led the Abyssal Hunter project for Aegir. Due to his experience following the Ishamalah bloodbath that wiped out the majority of the Abyssal Hunters, Blandis would become jaded with the path Aegir walked, so he would search for an alternative. A path in which Seaborn and Aegir may exist alongside each other. Ulpanias had a few choice words for that decision, but hey, he technically succeeded. From a certain point of view anyway. Clementia is the consul of Milarium and the head of Aegir's waterway program, a plan to create a super fast highway that connects Aegir and the land. She is a pretty interesting character overall, and her relationship with Gladia is quite interesting, especially as she is willing to sacrifice her for Aegir's sake despite loving her dearly. Consul Horatia is Gladia's mother. Despite Aegir's culture of communally raising children, Horatia raised Gladia herself. She's a pretty no-nonsense type of woman, direct and to the point. She wishes to bring the land powers up to speed on the Seaborn and potential future threats, and so she does it. Calcid's opinions be damned. That aside, I like to picture her raising Gladia as that Queen Never Cry meme that went around a few weeks ago. And now that I have sufficiently dated this video, the pink thing, Lucilla. She's an okay background character. She reported the disappearance of an Aegir worker, which led to Underflow and Irene's investigation surrounding her disappearance. I do like her, but she really doesn't get much focus. She does have a fantastic scene at the end of the event, but I felt she didn't have a great story building up to it. Either way, she's pretty cute. Cassia, a Shot to the Deep cultist, and once again reminding me that Arknights needs to drop this faction as a consistent enemy. She's okay. She's become disillusioned with Aegir's vision of the future, and that would be interesting if I knew she wasn't going to be backseated and killed by the end of the event. Not that she does actually die, she's arrested, but that aside, any of the other Church of the Deep cultists that have been featured in the Abyssal Hunter storyline so far could be put into a spot as an Aegir, and they would basically fulfill the same role. So, Arknights, please learn what you want to do with this faction. Avitus is a lore drop made character. He exists to drip feed lore to Lumen for the entire event. He also low-key sabotages Aegir by not immediately reporting Cassia upon learning she was a cultist. Regardless, he has chosen to exile himself on a suicide mission, so we won't need to worry about him in the future. And Morthos, the previously mentioned Aegir, made Seaborn. A very nice addition to the story, I must say. Having an intelligent Seaborn that not only knows the secret of Terra's history, but doesn't immediately get killed is a good thing. Yes, it adds a somewhat, I want to say human face, but look at him. It gives the Seaborn more than just eldritch fish going for them, although you might consider that a negative. Again, I'll talk about it in the conclusion. And with all that being said, if you just use the timestamps, the story. 3 months after the events of Sulti Ferronavis, the Inquisition received a message. Aegir, for the first time in history, reaches out. They announced their plans of building a waterway, a bridge that would connect Aegir to the land. This obviously was not them asking for help. They were telling Iberia a bridge would be built on their front door, and there was no discussing the matter. In response, the Doctor and Calcet arrive in Grand Pharaoh. They shall be Iberia's official envoys, and will soon be travelling to Aegir alongside the Abyss Hunters. Upon the Doctor arriving, they meet with Skadi. Skadi had been left behind while Gladi and Spectre swam out to the wreck of the Sulti Ferronavis. Now not even scraps remain, completely consumed by the Seaborn. This continued expansion of the Seaborn caused a stir within Skadi. Isham Allah remains. Skadi will not simply be able to ignore them. Shortly after their arrival, Aegir reaches out again. Clementia extends the formal invite to Iberia's Inquisition. Carmen, Irene, and Lumen watch the bionic drones as they convey the words of this woman to them. Completely irrelevant, but bionic drones built in a bionic factory, which means there is a completely in-universe bionic factory 1 within Aegir. So yeah, your boy is canon. Self-aggrandizing aside, Carmen decides to send both Irene and Lumen alongside the envoys to learn more about the country that they would soon call their ally. While all that was going down, Ulpanius is investigating Seaborn nests. They are becoming more active, building nests faster, evolving faster. Aegir, as it currently stands, is running out of time, and he intends to ensure that at least one future exists for his home. The group are greeted by videos explaining life within a Nigerian city, which has been conveniently uploaded as its own video on Arknights' official channel, but regardless, Lumen is not satisfied. He ventures out into the city in search of answers. Irene catches up to him around the time he meets Avitas. Lumen was interested in Nigerian history and Barogan, his potential ancestor, although he learns that they are in fact not related. Regardless, this would be the beginning of a friendship where Avitas would lore dump to Lumen, and Lumen would ask questions to receive more lore dumps. Before parting ways, a little handy would announce that the area was to be investigated by the Sea Patrol, and that civilians were to vacate the area. Irene remains behind, hoping to use this incident to learn about Aegir in her own way. Here she meets Underflow, the woman in charge of the missing person case. Although initially uninterested in her help, Underflow agrees to allow Irene to help her. Initially as an act of goodwill between allies, but soon she realizes that Irene's unorthodox thinking can help speed up the investigation, and a friendship blossoms between the two. The disappearance of someone working on the waterway project is rather serious, and worrying that the Church of the Deep is involved doesn't help matters. They interrogate Cassia and Lucilla about Tulia. Lucilla reported her acting strangely, and Cassia, being a member of the Church of the Deep, took the opportunity to spread a little confusion. Following questioning, Irene and Underflow investigate Tulia's home, but nothing other than fancy seaweed containers present itself. While all that was going down, the hunters aside from Gladia are taking the Doctor on a tour and having a generally nice time. Spectre explains that the giant structure at the center of the city is a defunct beacon launcher, which contains nanomachines. This would have been launched into the star pod to allow Aegir to reach the stars. While those three are having a generally nice time, Calcid and Gladia are meeting with Clementia to discuss the waterway and the Seaborn problem. The Seaborn have won the arms race between Aegir and them. Their evolution has pushed them ahead of Aegir's ability to create new weapons. Aegir has mitigated this somewhat by using combined weapon tactics, only deploying the most effective weapons they can when they are guaranteed at the complete destruction of the Seaborns battling them. As such, they have invented biological weapons that they intend to use for the first time to obliterate the Seaborn nests in the area and ensure the waterway remains clear. However, the Seaborn have been changing their behavior. Combined with the Hunter's return, Clementia puts Gladia on trial to clear her name. At her tribunal, Gladia is drilled, not just on her intentions upon returning, but on the mutations the Hunters have undergone. Blandis comes to Gladia's aid. As one of the head researchers working on the Abyss Hunter program, he informs everyone that things have not progressed to the point that anyone has to worry about the Hunters mutating. While this clears the air in regards to her mutations, Gladia is also questioned about the firstborn. Ulpanius told her there was more than one, but he has gone rogue. Although the hunters we know and love are cleared of suspicion, a warrant for Ulpanius' arrest is issued. During the tribunal, Ulpanius made contact with the Doctor. Ulpanius is wary of the Doctor's intentions, but the Doctor simply wishes to aid all of Rhodes Island's staff. The Doctor chooses to offer aid to Ulpanius as they recognize that he has no intentions for Scotty and the other hunters. Following the tribunal, a signal is received from Legion soldiers. They are under attack by Seaborn. Gladia and Spectre alongside the Sea Patrol and Irene are sent as reinforcements. Scotty is left behind by Gladia to protect the Doctor and to keep Ishamalar out of the water. By the time they arrive, all but one ship has been consumed by the Seaborn. Gladia and Spectre dispatch the remaining Seaborn without much fuss, but this is another setback to Aegir's plans. Clementia recognizes the immediate need for the Abyssal Hunters to return to the front lines, and orders Blandis to get them back into peak shape for the fighting. Irene and Underflow are approached by Lucilla again upon returning. She tells them of Tullia's love for cultivating seaweed. This gives them the idea of investigating areas where seaweed could be stored. Unfortunately, they are far too late for Tullia. She had been transformed into a Seaborn well before they arrived. What little remains for Mind informs them that someone had been tampering with the waterway beacons. She is unfortunately unable to tell them that she told Cassia this, but regardless, her mind is too far gone to save, and Underflow gives her a merciful end. While they were resolving that, Blandis was attacked by Church of the Deep members, seemingly to prevent the treatment of the hunters. This clever ruse essentially closed any suspicion that lay on Blandis in the hunter's eyes, so he was able to set his plans in motion. The attempt on Blandis' life did cause security to be raised around the research labs, which would prove to be a hindrance to Ulpanius' plans. Luckily, the Doctor is there to bail him out. They assist Ulpanius in avoiding detection by approaching Blandis under the guise of hoping to help him with the hunters. With this help, Ulpanius is able to deduce that the beacon system and the new biological weapons have been tampered with. He of course suspects Blandis, and thanks to the attempt on his life, no one else does. Cassia, however, is. Following interrogating the attempted assassins of Blandis, Underflow begins her hunt for Cassia. The Waterway project marches on, however, and the Abyssal Hunters and Legions are sent to plant the final beacon within a Seaborn nest. Blandis' plan cannot be stopped, but Ulpanius confronts him within the beacon tower. Blandis walked alongside the Church of the Deep, not becoming a member, but using them to complete his work. He sabotages the Class 4 weapons so that they would affect the Seaborn's biology. Having given up on fighting the Seaborn, he intends on creating unity. He hopes the biological weapons will erase the hostility of the Seaborn towards humanity. Ulpanius, being a reasonable person, recognizes that this is futile. Do not consume out of malice. They consume to survive. In their minds, bringing humanity into the Mani is the optimal way of removing their hostility. Regardless, with the final beacon planted, there is nothing they can do to stop him. Ulpanius executes Blandis. At least, that way he won't tarnish the memory Aegir has of him. After the beacon activates, Seaborn activity skyrockets. They begin rapidly multiplying and reaching out towards Malarium. The new weapons can't stop them, and the beacons paint a path directly to the tower Ulpanius is standing in. Lumen, who followed Ulpanius to the tower, watches in horror as the Seaborn cover the area. The very color of the ocean has changed. Luckily, the Eye of Iberia and the beacon operate on similar principles, so Lumen intends to separate it from the city proper, but it has been sabotaged already. Ulpanius remains behind to ensure it is detached manually, while Lumen heads off to find Avitus and repair the separation links, arriving just in time to save him from the advancing tide of Seaborn. Irene arrives shortly after that to save him, and with Avitus' help, they repair the links, and so Ulpanius sinks the beacon tower, taking the Seaborn contained on its plate to the depths, preventing complete consumption of the city. During the chaos, Lucilla catches a wounded Cassia sabotaging the city's defenses. She manages to keep her distracted long enough for Underflow to take her down, but the damage done by her is negligible compared to the threat of the Seaborn anyway. The hunters, thanks to Blandis' betrayal, were temporarily unable to fight at full strength in the Seaborn nest, but make an escape back to the city thanks to the timely arrival of the last night. Yet another Casimiro's W. Clementia attempts to get the Doctor and Calcid evacuated while the city positions itself on the surface to protect Iberia from the advancing Seaborn. While on this escape path, the trio is confronted by the humanoid Seaborn Mortis. Mortis confronts the Doctor and Calcid directly. He knows the truth of their origin. Amaten and Oracle. Relics from the predecessors. Upon coming into contact with Ishamalar, Mortis saw the truth of the past. Ishamalar revealed how the Doctor's race failed. He saw their destruction. In order to avoid that, he joined with the many in order to guide its evolution towards a path that averted catastrophe. Both Calcid and the Doctor reject his vision of survival, surprising Mortis as he believed that at least Calcid would see his side of things. Both reject his ramblings as one who's failed to see the value in humanity. Calcid and the Doctor stand opposed to the advancement of the Seaborn for the same reason they oppose Originium. Both are attempts by the predecessors to avert oblivion, and both have strayed from the intended path. Mortis, upon hearing their answers, leaves them. They, in the mind of the many, pose no threat to them. They cannot kill the Seaborn. Clementia takes Gladia and Calcid to meet with Horatia, while the Doctor runs off in search of Scotty, afraid of what might happen should she meet with Mortis. Meanwhile, Lumen and Irene return to land to rally the Iberian troops. Just then, the eyes of Iberia, lost in the silence, reactivate. Deep beneath the waves, Ulpanius watches on as the Seaborn assimilate the nanomachines within the beacon tower, lighting up even the ocean depths. Power surges through Aegir. The Seaborn connect themselves through Aegir's nanomachines, and Aegir connects to Aegir through the Seaborn waterway. Blandis' plan somewhat worked. The Seaborn, viewing the nanomachines as kin, have fed massive amounts of bioenergy into them, unintentionally connecting all of Aegir once more. Despite technically being a complete Seaborn victory, Aegir has achieved its goal. Horatia, talking to the trio from across the sea, gets to meet her daughter after many years apart. However, she is immediately down to business. She will use Malarium as a port to the rest of Terra. Calcid and Gladia both advise against this, but her mind is made up. Irene arrives back in Malarium and combines the newly activated Eye of Iberia with Aegir's sensors to map the entire region, allowing for an effective counterattack against the Seaborn. Scotty gets to meet with Mortis while she is cleaning up Seaborn within the city. Although unsure as to why Ishamalah chose Scotty, he deduces that she will have an important role in the evolution of the Seaborn. Mortis is even overjoyed when seeing the Doctor standing alongside Scotty. Ishamalah stands beside the ancient civilization that created her. He recognizes now that the connection between the two is the key to the future he seeks, and returns to the depths of the ocean. Following the successful defense of Malarium, Aegir sends a broadcast across Terra. From Columbia to Yan, all hear the voice of Aegir calling for unity against a greater threat. Is this wise? Probably not, especially as Aegir specifies that unity will be formed under the leadership of Aegir. So even if it seems like a good deal, unity at the barrel of a black hole gun isn't true unity. Although, that's future story problems. As a sign of goodwill, Aegir broadcasts geographical data for the foreign hotlands and the Enfi ice fields. They even send images of lands far to the north of the snows corrupted by demons. Ulpanius, having survived the whole sinking thing, has pursued Mortis following his departure from Malarium. Ulpanius wants to stop Mortis from awakening the other firstborn Leviathans, and Mortis promises to provide him with all the information he has. On one small condition: he joins the many. And, despite all the risks, Ulpanius agrees, which closes out Path of Life. I mean, Avitus decides to invite Lumen on a suicide mission to explore uncharted waters, but that seems little small when compared to Ulpanius' stuff and Aegir revealing itself to the world. So, overall, Path of Life is a pretty solid event. Not my favourite, but far from terrible, but like I said, I have some issues, primarily surrounding the Seaborn. Firstly, the Church of the Deep is terrible as far as antagonists go. Putting a human face on the Seaborn is fine, but if every one of these antagonists are fated to be completely overshadowed by the Seaborn themselves, why even bother? Mortis appeared basically at the end of the event and was far more interesting than Cassia. Seaborn are intelligent beings. They don't need humans to convey that for them. It was fine in Undertides because we were just being introduced to them, but I think it's a concept that they should just retire or change up. Personally speaking, I much prefer the Church of the Deep's role within Hortus the Escapismo, where they are spreading the blessings of the Seaborn to those far from Aegir. Very cool, and I want more of that in the future. That aside, I am worried for the Seaborn going forward. One of the things I enjoyed the most about them was how eldritch they felt. An unknowable yet intelligent other that consumed your fellows and learned more about you, while you struggle to grasp any knowledge on them, aside from how they killed them. Not that them being part of the Doctor's racist experiments isn't new info. We've known that since IS-3. But that thousands of years of unknown time to become what they are now, that was unexplored. Now they are just test tube babies that were fermenting till 200 years before the current events. Don't get me wrong, I still love the Seaborn, and I particularly like seeing what I assume is the Doctor reaching out to comfort Ishamalah. It's interesting, but I am worried. Also, I fear they are rapidly approaching the same issue as the Tyranids. The Seaborn are this unending threat to existence, but can never get a real on-screen W. Yes, they have IS-3, but that's what-ifs. They're not in the main timeline. Them consuming the Beacon Tower, an act that should have crippled the Waterway project, became just another Aegir W. And I get it. If the Seaborns win, Terra is fucked. But come on. Being told that Malarium can only last 2 more weeks against the Seaborn attacking it sounds great, until it's revealed literally like 2 sentences later that Aegir reinforcements are just a week away. Hippogriff, don't let my beloved fish become threatening in description only. I'm not asking for you to kill off operators, but next time they are a main threat, show them completely devouring an Aegir city in a CG. Let them show off that they mean business. And with all that being said, I want to know your specific thoughts on Path of Life. Is it abyss fiction? Are you excited for the future of this storyline? Do you think it's going to lead into Arknights' 3rd act? Let me know down below. Shout out to Enfield, by the way. Shit looks so much better than last year. But that's for another time. Y'all be good people, and I'll see you in the next one.